Okay, so hello guys. Welcome back to After Class. Today we have our guest, Mr. K. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can you talk?
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course. We are very happy to have you. So let's get started. So in psychology class, we learned about many psychological perspectives. There's biological, psychodynamic, blah, blah, blah. Which one do you agree with the most?
Which one do I don't think I agree with one the most. Like many of you in class, you tend to, integrate more the holistic viewpoint. It's what it's called. In terms of psychoanalytical or psychodynamic, what it's currently used for. I'm a little bit old school, so I still call it psychoanalytical. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you were saying? Sorry.
So I think, because I'm not 100% certain, that I tend towards humanism, psychoanalytical, or psychodynamic psychology.
Oh, okay.
But as well as I absolutely see behaviorism operating, as well as I like to play around with evolutionary psychology.
Oh, interesting.
So to say, which one do I hear? It's almost impossible to say. And,
Yeah.
Again, it's just there are multiple causes for human behavior.
Oh, so you kind of just see each perspective as being applicable to different things, but you you just like humanism because do you like the positive aspect of it?
I like the positive aspect of I like the idea of human beings, as long as their needs are met, be it physiological, sociological, psychological needs are met. That we are active and creative.
Yes.
Okay, that every human being wants to reach their potential. I fully believe that. And if a human being is struggling, that's because there are certain needs, whether it's emotional needs, being needs, or physical needs that are not met. Other than that, I think every single human being on the face of the planet is here to reach their potential, to fulfill. People want to reach their potential. They are active and creative.
Yes.
People want to change their circumstances. People want to be happy. They want to be loved.
Yes.
So that's as far as humanism is concerned. Yes.
I think that's a really awesome perspective to have. So speaking of psychological needs and reaching their potential, so since you're older than most, all these high schoolers, do you have any tips on how to self-actualize and reach the highest level of the hierarchy of needs?
I think the biggest tip I would be is accepting everybody, or you are one piece of the puzzle. That we are just not. We're not. We are a social animal. Okay. We can't live alone. So in terms of an individual self-actualizing and reaching their potential, I think one of the most aspects is recognizing everybody else's need to self-actualize and reach their potential, and recognize everybody's individualistic gifts that they have been born with. So I think that's key towards the individual's self-actualization.
Yeah.
I think teenagers, there is the concept of the adolescent or teenager that has self-actualized.
Oh, really?
And I think that's individuals that I've met here at the Charter School of Wilmington over the years that I believe have self-actualized or getting close to self-actualization.
Oh, okay.
That kind of reach some of those. If you take a look at the characteristics of a self-actualized individual, I've seen that in individuals here at the Charter School of Wilmington. I think it's part and parcel, maybe at any high school, but absolutely here at the Charter School of Wilmington. I think those individuals tend to be very acceptant of the other individuals. So yeah, I think that's the best tip I could give. Is
Wow.
Just look out. Don't look in. Look out towards others.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Do you think you are personally close to self-actualization, or have you reached those points in your life at certain times?
So in terms of, if you take a look at the characteristics of a self-actualized individual, I think the one that is that feeling of euphoria.
Oh, yeah.
So, just driving down the road and just feeling euphoric. So I kind of experienced that, but I think I have like too much self-doubt, and insecurities to say that I'm like a self-actualized person.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
I
right.
see. I see. All right. Well, speaking of, so we talked about like teenagers and how like some teenagers you see self-actualize. So according to Eric Erickson's theory, all of us as teenagers we're currently going through the identity versus role confusion stage,
Yes.
where we have like things like the personal fable and the imaginary audience. And I think I especially relate to the personal fable part. You know, when I was 14, 15, it's really like bad part. But do you have any tips for teenagers for successfully passing this stage?
For successfully is just my tip would be just to enjoy the ride. Don't worry about the future so much.
Oh, okay.
I think all of us tend to, most the adults I speak to tend to find their way. So some of that angst and the conflict that teenagers have are really just for naught. And we tend just to kind of find our way, find our identity, our role, where we fit in
Yeah.
society. From the individuals, and this is just personal, talking to people, interviewing people, and asking people questions. And also through my classes, one of my classes, I have them go speak to professionals. Well, we did the extra credit in psychology class where you talk to a psychologist.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we saw that in those presentations, that a lot of the psychologists that you spoke to just kind of happened into that walk in life, into the profession, into their identity, and they embraced it.
Yes.
And many of the psychologists, professional psychologists that you guys spoke about or presented in class, they found a very rewarding life,
Oh,
even
yeah.
though it wasn't not necessarily as high schoolers going off to college. They were saying, "Oh, this is what I'm going to do as an adult." It kind of just happenstance, fell into place. So I think a tip for teenagers going through identity crisis is to just enjoy, keep your options open, enjoy being a teenager.
Yes.
We all find our way in life. We all find our identity. We all wind up, for the most part, we wind up finding where we fit.
Yeah.
You let it happen. It's kind of like, I guess, maybe falling in love, right? That's the advice for falling in love. You don't go out looking for love. You find love. Same way with your identity or your occupation or who you are. You don't necessarily go out looking for it. It just kind of happens to you naturally.
Yeah.
And the more natural you let it happen, sometimes the better it is.
Great, great. I think a lot of charter students can take that advice because I know at like such a competitive school, a lot of people are extremely future focused. And you talked about just kind of enjoying the ride because we don't get to be high schoolers forever. And as a senior right now, I'm like, wow, the past 4 years it just didn't happen. It feels like it didn't happen because I feel like I rushed way too much and I was too future focused. So any charter students who are listening right now, I highly recommend taking Mr. K's advice, especially if you're a freshman. But anyway, so we kind of started out talking about like humanism and the positive aspects of psychology. Let's go into like the darker theories of psychology because I know in psychology there's a lot of like very controversial theories, especially with like Freud and everything. And some of Freud's theories, like the defense mechanisms, a lot of people agree with, and then the other things like Oedipus complex, not everyone agrees with.
Right.
So I wanted to see your personal opinions on Freud's theories and which theories do you like, which theories do you not like.
Well, I agree with Freud in the sense, so personally, when a person has an objection to Freud's theory, I don't think that individual really understands Freud's theory. So if an individual is not operating on all the information, my best suggestion is go back and actually read Freud and read the history of psychoanalytical psychology. Don't just don't take another person's viewpoint or opinion on Freud's theories, because also my experience is individuals who have or have written things on Freud's theories haven't necessarily read Freud's theories or the history of psychoanalytical psychology. Okay, so with that said, in terms of I don't see it as a dark. It's not dark.
Some people consider it dark.
And
but
that's
yes.
where I disagree.
Yes.
And say, well, I don't think you really understand Freud's theory of psychosexual development, okay, and his theory of the human psyche, psychodynamic theory on the human psyche. It's because it's not dark. It's it's basically about our nervous system, and our basic needs, our basic wants, which is basically expressed in the id in his, okay, and then to where you have society's desires, what society wants us to do, and that conflict is that subconscious, unconscious conflict that happens, that we don't recognize it, we don't for what it is, and from there you have all the ego defense mechanisms that develop. So to call it dark is to call so. I don't know. I watched my German Shepherd here, and this might be a little graphic, but I don't know, like a bunny rabbit, right? A baby bunny rabbit is the cutest thing on the face of the earth, right? I think their survival mechanism is to be cute.
Yeah.
And then you watch your German Shepherd Terrier that catch a I think German Shepherds are it's innate in them to chase after small furry things and rip it apart. Okay,
Yes.
that's what they do. So to call that dark is like, it's not really dark. That's just part of nature.
Yes.
Okay, going back way back to their origins. So I don't think it's just the balance of nature, and I think that it's Freud is recognizing that conflict, that we have to live as a society to survive.
Yes.
So in order to live as a society, we have society, we have culture, we have all the rules that are just layered.
Yeah.
That we have to take our basic physical needs and put those aside to listen, to what society wants us to do. So we have to be uncomfortable.
Yes.
We have to hurt. We have to be in pain, or we have to be in absence of feeling good, of pleasure, because of what society wants us to do, wants us not to do. Okay, and then so that's an unconscious conflict that we kind of push away from our mind. We don't recognize it. That we deal with, according to Freud, since year one, okay, is when we're first introduced, we're weaned from the bottle, okay, or potty trained. So that's when we're first introduced to the demands of society. So that creates like negative energy within us, and we just deny it and we push it out of the way. So I think to not recognize that, to say, oh, that's dark or that's not right, is part of the denial process. That Freud kind of spoke about it. So I don't think it's dark. I just think it's a basic mechanism of being a physical being with a nervous system, okay?
Yeah.
One that feels pleasure, that feels sensation, okay? As well as a member of a society, a member of a group, to where you have to, you have to follow certain rules.
Yeah.
Okay? And you have to sacrifice certain things.
Yeah.
So that's just a basic mechanism.
Yeah.
So like in life, you always have, you have negative and positive. So it's not necessarily, it's what makes it dark or evil.
It's just like so true. It's just so true to like the core of human nature that I feel like when a lot of people read about Freud's theories, I think it's their super ego just being like, no, this is bad. Society told me that this is bad.
Yes.
I cannot recognize this.
Yes.
But it's true. Like you can't deny it.
Can't deny it.
Yeah.
And that's saying, oh no, that's not, you shouldn't talk about it. We don't talk about that. That's dark. That is society's. And then, so the individual, it's good for you to I think it's good for you to recognize that.
Yeah.
Say, oh, that's actually society, or the component of your psyche that is part of society, which is our superego. Yeah. Right? Talking through you to reject it. And we're not going to entertain that thought. We're not going to, which then becomes, the Oedipus complex. And, some of the other theories that you mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of the superego, so I remember when I took this psychology course, and I read about the personality disorders. For antisocial personality disorder, I read like somewhere on the internet that like people who are psychopaths or sociopaths, it's just that they develop because their superego just they weren't in a good environment for their superego to be developed. So do you think it's possible for like someone with antisocial personality disorder to maybe later in life be changed? Like I know like the prime time to develop your superego isn't when you're like
Right.
older, but is it possible?
So that's a good question, and that's a deep question, and I don't have necessarily research to support my statements. Okay, so that's very much the what you said was the psychodynamic viewpoint.
Yeah.
Okay, but we can also see to where individuals who are criminals, psychotic behavior, psychopaths, that their prefrontal cortex, the functioning in their prefrontal cortex is diminished. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So that actually, yeah. So that says, that, this individual actually does not feel empathy because you know that your prefrontal cortex plays a large role in the feeling of empathy. Okay. So, and that's also in terms of something that Freud wasn't necessarily able to do back in the 1900s, early 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s, in terms of MRI and PET scans, okay, which was then contributed to ego and superego, which isn't very testable scientific.
Yeah.
Now we can actually see the science behind. We can see that those certain portions of an individual who demonstrates those criminal behaviors, antisocial behaviors, are not working. That individual actually is not feeling empathy. So to change that later on in life, I'm going to say it's going to be, I think, very difficult.
Yeah.
For the individual later on in life.
Yeah.
Say a 30, 40, 50-year-old to change individual. Yes.
Yeah. When I learned about like Freud's like superego, id, and like ego, it was kind of sort of terrifying because what like pretty much the idea was like, oh, the only reason that humans aren't like killing each other right now is because society like developed our superego. So we are told to like, oh, we can't like do bad things. But a lot of people like I used to, and I still believe try to believe this.
Each other.
Yeah, I like to believe that we are like intrinsically good as human beings, but
Right.
Freud is kind of just like, no, we're not. Superego is from society, and that's the only reason we're not killing each other.
But so we are killing each other.
Yeah.
Okay. So like right now, by the end of the day, humanity, quite a bit of humanity would perish because either through crime, okay, or through war.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't think it's not necessary that we're not good. I think individuals rationalize these acts through thinking their intentions are good. What they feel they're doing, whether it's nationalism or they're protecting something. I feel not all human beings, there is this idea of evil, okay? But many people, I think, do bad things or do ill acts or hurt other people because of what they think is right.
Yeah.
Okay. And that can just be, patriotism or nationalism.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And then so on and so forth. We can get more individualistic with that.
Yeah.
But basically, we rationalize, and that's Freud as well. Okay, we can rationalize. So basically, the individual who's committing the evil act in their mind is doing a good thing. They're doing something good for society, their group. So yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
So it's not necessarily. Ultimately, it's an evil act. But
it's just different perspectives.
It's well intended, different perspectives,
Yeah. Wow, that's like really.
So to say that the person's evil or bad, that's an overstatement for me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it just depends on like whose viewpoint is.
Yeah. Because I think all three of us in this room, I think, could, under the right circumstances, commit murder. and wake up the next morning. I think you have to reconcile that, but it's within all human beings' capability to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. I think everything just goes back to our id and how it's horrible. No, I'm kidding. But yeah,
It's
let's.
life. It's life.
Yeah.
I think it's like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, let's lighten things up a bit. So, can you tell us about high school Mr. K?
High school?
Yes.
When I was in high school?
Yes.
What would you like to know specifically?
I don't know. What was high school Mr. K like? Were you how have you changed from high school? Were you like the super nerdy? Were you like super
No, I was not super nerdy.
super social, super athletic? I don't know.
I guess. Well, I think I changed from year to year. Almost every year, it was a different person, if you will. Maybe some of that.
Okay.
I moved around a lot.
Oh, okay.
So where I graduated, it wasn't, I think, like many people. Well, maybe not so much for Church School Wilmington, but I know in the high school I graduated from, everybody kind of went to, you went to elementary school together, you went to middle school together. So I entered the high school that I graduated from my sophomore year. So it was basically, building a whole new set of friends at that point. So as the years progressed, I became like more and more sociable as I was able to get out and know people.
Yeah.
But that, about that sophomore year, I wasn't, I was kind of quiet and reserved. Right.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. So did you focus like a lot on school?
Did not focus on school. I like to learn.
Okay.
I read it. I've always read a lot. I don't read as much as I used to when I was in high school. So like Freud's books, there's 3 books. I read those my senior year.
Okay. Wow.
So I didn't do well. I did really well in high school. I did really well in the classes that I liked. Okay. If I didn't like a class, I didn't do well.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So I'm not an academic. So I was more of in terms of social, going out, being with friends. I was not focused in on school.
Yeah.
But I did like to learn.
Yeah.
Sometimes I thought that school itself got in the way of learning because I would be assigned a certain book that I had to read. And I would want to read my own books when I was in high school. I did not want to go to college right out. By the time I got to my 12th grade year, I was done with academics and being told what I was supposed to read. So I did not go to college right after high school. I was done. I just went out and I worked. At that time, I was working at a place called Smalls Formal Wear, which is a tuxedo shop.
Oh,
my senior
cool.
year, I started working there. I think it was going from junior to senior year. I started working there. I loved it, so I stayed working with Smalls Formal Wear for 5 years after I graduated high school. During that time is when I discovered that I wanted to be a social studies teacher. Because I had some experiences. I had a change in taste in terms, and I also at the time I thought, like in high school, I thought social studies was just boring. So like the history class. So I took sociology and psychology. I also took economics class. And I took economics class in high school. But yeah, I didn't find any of those interesting. They were just boring. But then after I graduated and went on working, my reading changed. I started to read more history. Okay, my interest changed. So, and then also through my job, I started to train teenagers. Because we would hire teenagers, local high schoolers, or our part-timers.
Yeah.
So I like to train my employees so I didn't have to be in the store.
Yeah.
So they could they could take care of everything, and they can take care of all the customers, just like it was myself. Okay, so I was very successful with doing that, and how Smallest Formalwear or how any retail shop awards this is that they give you a busier, because I worked on commission, so they would give you a busier, a store that made more money. So therefore, you just got a natural raise because you worked on commission.
Oh, okay. So you were good
I-
at sales, like talking to people?
I was good at sales, and I was also good at training my employees and trusting my employees to make them good at sales.
Yeah.
So I would always phenomenally increase. They would give me a store, and I would turn the store around.
Yeah.
Okay. More so is that I would hire individuals, I would train them, and they enjoyed what they did, and they did it well. So I didn't have to be there. I could leave,
Yeah.
and the store took care of itself. That was
Yeah.
my goal. So what I did was I enjoyed teaching. We hired teenagers.
Yes.
Okay, so I enjoyed training them. Okay, also at the time I started to enjoy history. So and I thought, they taught it wrong in high school. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of put those two together and said, I want to be a social studies teacher. So that's when I went back to school to become a social studies teacher.
Oh, wow. So you didn't go to college until after the 5 years of sales?
Yeah,
And
yes.
the-
It took me 5
Oh,
years
wow.
to discover that's what I wanted to do in life, was be a social studies teacher.
Wow. So I think the really big lesson that I can learn from this is that you just really don't rush things. Just like, because I feel like a lot of people here, like, I'll hear a 14-year-old say, oh, I want to be a doctor. And I'm like, are you sure you want to dedicate like your entire life to this? Like, you don't know that. And they're like, yeah, like for sure. But you just take it easy and you end up fine. And I think that's a better way to do it.
I think, that's what happens with most people.
Yeah.
Is they wind up, your occupation, not necessarily the better way, but I think a lot of people, there's a lot of angst, a lot of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
Because it feels, it's just huge.
Yeah.
And it's threatening. So I think a lot of people, we just happen to find our way in life
Yeah.
rather than push it,
Yeah.
right, and enjoy it. That's important, is to enjoy every step. Like you enjoy being a freshman, enjoy being a sophomore, enjoy being a junior,
Yeah.
enjoy being a senior, and then enjoy being a freshman in college.
Yeah.
Don't rush it. You'll get to the workplace, you'll get to your occupations quick enough.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, 25 years have passed.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
And that's what's happened to me.
Wow. Well,
So
thank you so much. I feel like I've really learned. I think there was a lot of things that I learned from this conversation with you. So I'm very happy. Thank you very much for your time. All right. Well, I think that's.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's all we have for today. See you
All right.
next time.
Hopefully it's good.